Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are asking the question, how do we know if it's worth trading lower valuable collectibles up for higher investment grade items? And this is a question that we've all had to ask from time to time. Maybe you have a collection of CGC graded comic books. Maybe you have a collection of vintage PSA graded Pokemon cards. Maybe you have a collection of fairly valuable gold or silver coins, and you want to trade that collection towards a higher valued investment grade collectible. Well, today I'm going to give you the pros and cons of doing that, and we're going to even use a hypothetical scenario in the vintage graded comic book space. So this is, remember, a collectibles finance channel. So I want you to put aside any emotional attachment you have for these items while you're watching this video. Now, I know some of you out there probably do not collect or like graded comic books. I want to assure you, even though we're using graded comic books in this scenario, this can apply to almost anything, even rare books, even pieces of art, even traditional antiques, or even vintage toys. It doesn't matter the item. You must understand, though, the thinking behind this so that you don't make a disastrous financial decision. Because believe it or not, hint, hint, as you're going to see in this video, taking a collection of smaller valued items and trading them up to use towards a more valuable, expensive item isn't always wise. And that's what this video is going to show you. So before we get started here, I do have to bring this up because it kind of piggybacks on some of the talking points I made in this video that you're seeing on the screen right now that premiered roughly 2 years ago on this channel. I did a video entitled Collectible Investment and Speculation, Understanding the Financial Tiers of the Antiques and Collectibles Trade. Now, I don't need you to stop this video and go watch that video. I will link it in the video description below, just in case you do want the full understanding of why certain tiers, when we look at financial tiers, the cost and value of items that make up the antiques and collectibles trade, it does matter. Because you have to understand, when you start hitting items over $10,000 in value, there are fewer and fewer collectors and investors that can afford to keep and buy those items on a regular basis. And this comes into play here because sometimes I think the overall media, the auction companies, the grading companies, they make it seem like it's very easy to sell a $50,000 comic book, or heaven forbid, a $200,000 painting, or a $500,000 trading card, or a $2 million coin. I'm here to tell you, a lot of work goes behind the scenes from the standpoint of the auction company that is pretty much putting those high-profile items into their upcoming sale. There's a lot of promotional opportunities that happen behind the scenes to get high-end collectors and investors interested in those items. They are, in certain cases, very hard to move. Every dealer out there, whether it's a rare coin dealer, whether it's a comic book dealer, whether it's a trading card, sports card dealer, whoever it is, they will all tell you the same thing. Once you get over a certain price point, it is very risky at times, also depending on your own net worth and financial responsibilities, to hold items like that in your own personal collection. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's suppose that we have a hypothetical investment grade portfolio geared towards these 9 Bronze Age CGC graded comic books. And we're going to go through all of these and we're going to discuss them in detail. And because we have this collection, we're really interested in potentially trading these books for a copy of Strange Tales 110 in CGC 9.2, which in today's market is probably worth, if you can find one, anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 conservatively. Now, if we wanted this book in 9.4, we could expect to pay $60,000 or more for this book. Now, those of you that have been with me for years, you know what I teach on this channel. I teach proper use of the optimal collecting grade. So when we're looking at Strange Tales 110, this is directly from Go Collect. I'm signed in. I'm on their website. You can see in 9.2 condition, they put the fair market value of this book at present time at $27,000. Now, I consider that price point to be possibly a little low. Most likely, if a dealer is going to have this in their inventory, due to the scarcity of this book, they're probably going to price it at least at $30,000. I could honestly assume certain dealers out there would probably put the price at $35,000, $40,000 just to see if they get any hits. That said, we're assuming that we can find this book for sale in 9.2 condition for $30,000. Now, 9.2, if we look at these population reports along with their fair market value, 9.2 is the optimal collecting grade here. There are 16 copies of this book right now at present time out there somewhere in personal collections in 9.2 condition. In 9.4, there's 15 copies of this book somewhere out there. In 9.6, there's roughly 7 copies of this book out there. Now, obviously, these numbers can't be fully trusted because people do play the crack and resubmit game. This just gives us an estimate, an idea of how many copies CGC has come across in each one of these grades at some point in time. So this isn't gospel by any means, but it does give us a starting point. Now, again, looking at these prices, I would never, ever recommend somebody go after this book in 9.6 condition, especially if you're going to pay $150,000, $160,000 for this book. That is just ludicrous to me when you can get a 9.2, a well-positioned looking 9.2 for right around $30,000. That's where I would want to be on this book. So let's look at our hypothetical Bronze Age investment key portfolio to see if it's worth trading some of these books towards a Strange Tales 110 in CGC 9.2. So this is what we have in this hypothetical portfolio. We have a Marvel Spotlight 2 in CGC 9.4. Now, I put the estimated value of this book right now right around $2,200. You're welcome to disagree. Prices change on a regular basis in the antiques and collectibles trade. I'm more conservative on most of my prices that I apply when we talk about fair market value for a lot of books than other people. So just keep that in mind. Your mileage may vary. Now, when we look at Marvel Spotlight 2, in 9.4 condition, there are 83 copies of this book in that grade. There are 31 in 9.6, and there are 4 in 9.8. This is a fairly scarce Marvel Bronze Age key. I think that we can all agree on that. Now, probably, if you're not a fan of this book, it's because, let's be realistic, it's Werewolf by Night. It's really not a comic character that is going to take the world by storm anytime soon, even if you like horror comics like I do. But still, this is a somewhat scarce Marvel Bronze Age key. Now, after that particular book, we have the wonderful Night Nurse 1 in CGC 9.6 condition. Right now, this book's probably worth anywhere from $4,500 to $5,000 on the open market. There was a time during the pandemic, this book shot up to the stratosphere. I was pretty much shaking my head because, let's be realistic, this is the first appearance of Linda Carter, for crying out loud. It's still a scarce book, especially in 9.6, because there's only 18 in that grade and 6 in 9.8 condition, according to the CGC census. Now, going forward on this list, one of my favorite Batman keys, especially from the Bronze Age era, Neil Adams did the cover, is Batman 232. And in CGC 9.6, this book right now is trending anywhere from $4,000 to roughly $4,300 if you can find it in the open market. Now, it's really not that hard to find because in 9.6 condition, there is 154 of those in that grade and 80 in 9.8 condition. Now, make no mistake, all these books that I'm going to be listing here are all in the optimal collecting grade, which I just explained to you when we looked at why we're buying Strange Tales 110 potentially in 9.2 condition. It's very important to note that if you are investing in third-party graded collectibles that are established, not speculative, established, mainly your vintage comic books, coins, currency, certain vintage sports cards, you attempt to get them in the optimal collecting grade. We've talked about this immensely in past videos on this channel. This is key if you are attempting to invest in these items, especially over the long term. Because please remember, these items are, regardless, 100% speculative. There are no underlying cash flows. There are no guarantees in these markets. Collectible markets, much like real estate markets, much like the market for cryptocurrency, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever it is, they don't just go up and down. They also can go sideways for many years. There's no guarantee that this copy of Batman 232 in CGC 9.6 is going to stay at the $4,000 price point. Or there's also a chance that this book does nothing over the next 10 years, and literally in the year 2035, it still is seen selling for around $4,000. And guess what? Time value of money is very important. Cost of that money being tied up in a book like this, you just put $4,000 in a book that did nothing for 10 years. So that has to be taken into account. So you have to understand everything that we are investing in the antiques and collectibles trade is 100% speculative. It is all a risk. What we are trying to do when we talk about collectible finance, we are trying to mitigate risk. And this is something that a lot of people that come into my comment section still do not understand. Now, continuing on our list here, we have Detective Comics 400. Another excellent Batman key. Probably not as popular with some as Batman 232, but it does feature a cover by Neil Adams. It also is in, at least this particular example, 9.6 condition, which right now, again, conservatively, it's probably worth right around $3,500, maybe on a good day, $3,700 at auction to get a book like this. There are 31 copies in 9.6 condition, and there are 10 on 9.8 condition, according to, again, Go Collect and the CGC census. Now, further up on this list, we have another Batman key, one of my favorites, Batman 227. Now, unfortunately, due to the fact that I've been talking a lot about this book, especially in past videos, the price of this book has really appreciated over the last few years, especially even in the depressed market that we find ourselves in for graded comic books. This book in 9.6 condition, I have already seen selling over the last few years for close to $10,000. So this particular copy is in 9.4 condition, which is if you are going to buy a copy of Batman 227, that's really right where you want to be if you can't afford a 9.6. 9.4 is fine due to the price appreciation that occurred with this book. And there's 59 of these in 9.4 condition, 26 in 9.6, and 9 in 9.8. Now, I put the value of this book right around $4,000. Some of you are going to disagree. Maybe you think that price point is too high. Maybe some of you think it's too low. Regardless, again, I price these items at a very conservative level, to be fair here. This is a book that we can't argue. It is a highly sought after Bronze Age key, especially if you are a Batman fan. Now, coming up next on the list is a book that I spend a lot of time cautioning people about. Werewolf by Night 32 is not scarce by any means. And back during the pandemic, with wonderful The Moon Knight Limited series that premiered on Disney Plus, people were paying close to $10,000 for this book in 9.4 condition, which I thought was ludicrous. Well, lo and behold, thank God the market kind of corrected here, because now you can get a 9.4 condition copy right around $3,500, maybe $4,000 if you really have to pay up for it. There is 247 of these in 9.4 condition. There's 98 in 9.6. And again, according to the current population reports, whether you want to trust them or not, there's 25 in 9.8. I will tell you, most people are not cracking a 9.8. In most cases, they're not attempting to go for a 9.9 or a 10. That's completely crazy. So usually the population reports, when it lists the amount of copies in 9.8 condition, that's fairly close, in my opinion, and can be trusted. Some people out there in La La Land will tell you, no population reports are 100% honest. I kind of disagree with that, because most people are not going to crack a 9.8 and risk the book coming back in 9.6 condition. Because if you look at any high-grade key comic book, the price difference between a 9.8 and a 9.6, which is the next grade below it, is substantial. So it's usually not worth taking the risk in that regard, except in few scenarios where if you see some type of defect that can be pressed out, you can send it in, it can get pressed, maybe then it's worth taking the risk. But overall, most people keep 9.8s slabbed and sealed. They don't crack them out. Now, next on the list is Giant Size X-Men 1. Now, I got to give you a little bit of a monologue about X-Men 1, especially Giant Size X-Men 1. I really think that this book is extremely overhyped. I felt that way for many, many years. During the pandemic, obviously, this book was in the stratosphere. It now has started to come down to reasonable price levels. I honestly do believe, though, even in 9.4 condition, at $5,500, I still think this book is selling for a significant premium, given how many copies are out there and readily available. Case in point, there's 662 copies of this book in 9.4 alone. There's 483 in 9.6. And again, there's 129 in 9.8. And there's one sole example out there in 9.9 condition. Now, would I ever recommend anybody going out and paying a premium and getting a 9.9 condition copy of this book? No, that is complete insanity. But I will tell you, in 9.4 condition, if you're really building a collection of investment grade Bronze Age keys, this is really where you want to be. If you can get this book for like $5,500, even $6,000 in 9.4, you understand the risks in holding it. You understand that it is by no means rare, even in 9.4, even in 9.8 condition, for heaven forbid, and you still want to take the risk and you want to own it, by all means, go get yourself a copy of Giant Size X-Men 1. I just feel when we look at the Bronze Age era of comic books, especially key issue comic books, there are better opportunities out there than Giant Size X-Men 1. I also feel the same way about Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is not in this hypothetical portfolio, and also Incredible Hulk 181. I said something that somebody considered to be very controversial in one of my previous videos. I actually consider Incredible Hulk 180 a better investment hedge over the long term than Incredible Hulk 181, because Incredible Hulk 181 has been hyped up so much. You need to take that into account when you're attempting to invest in these items, especially over the long term, and we're looking at books that are not remotely scarce. Next on our list, we are getting towards the end here, guys, I promise you. Next on our list is Tomb of Dracula 10. Obviously, this is the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer. Now, those of you that remember during the pandemic, this was another book that hit the stratosphere because rumors were flying that Marvel was putting into production a new Blade the Vampire Slayer movie. Now, I don't know if that movie got canceled. I don't know if it's still in development hell, but it hasn't been released, and as a result, the book has pretty much dropped like a rock. Now, even to this day, with the market the way it is, a 9.6 condition copy is still going to set you back roughly a minimum of $4,000. Is it worth owning? I'm not going to lie. I actually like the book. I just think the character has been overhyped, especially with the movie announcement that really never came. I also am one of those purists. I remember back in the day, Wesley Snipes as Blade the Vampire Slayer. So I'm kind of partial to Wesley Snipes playing that role rather than any newcomer. It's just the way that I feel because of that nostalgia factor. Again, I know this is a collectibles finance channel, but I too feel emotional attachment and nostalgia to a lot of these items, to a lot of these things, to a lot of these characters. With that said, there are 155 copies of this book in 9.6 alone. There's 91 in 9.8, and there's one in 9.9. Obviously, I would never recommend paying up for that copy in 9.9. Last on the list is X-Men 94. Now, I want to be honest here. I put this book in here for a purpose because honestly, when we talk about X-Men, I really feel a certain way to the fact that Giant Size X-Men 1 gets all the credit. I honestly think that X-Men 94 has significant opportunity if there's more movies, more, how do I want to say this, more attention being paid to the X-Men in general. X-Men 94, in my opinion, if you can get this in CGC 9.4 for roughly $3,000, you're doing pretty well. It's a book that I really like, even though it is not scarce by any means, as you're going to see. But compared to Giant Size X-Men 1, this book actually does appear scarce. You can see the grade comparison right here. When we look at X-Men 94, which, by the way, I put the estimated value of this book right around $3,250 right now. I know some of you may think that that's a little low. I did see one that sold for like $3,400, $3,500. I do know a couple of months back, well, actually, it's probably almost a year now, Dale Roberts had one that sold almost immediately for like $3,000. I consider that to be a bargain for a book like this. But there is 309 of these in 9.4 condition. There's 135 in 9.6, and there's 51 in 9.8. So you can see, just comparing these numbers to Giant Size X-Men 1, obviously, Giant Size X-Men 1 is more common. Now, obviously, too, it's much more popular than X-Men 94. But I do see some value here. Now, in my opinion, based on these numbers here, the total estimated market value for this collection is $34,950. Now, we are asking, is it wise to trade up for a Strange Tales 110 in CGC 9.2 with, on the high end, we're probably going to pay $30,000 to possibly $35,000 for this book. Well, with the value of all these books alone, we could actually possibly go to a dealer and say, hey, I have this collection of vintage Bronze Age key books. All is what I want is that Strange Tales 110 in CGC 9.2 that you have in your inventory. And I got to be fair here, guys. I'm sure that some dealers would probably just take an outright trade for all of these books for that one sole copy of Strange Tales 110 in CGC 9.2. So this begs the question, is this a wise direction to take? Well, this is where we have to analyze the pros and cons. This is the thing that you got to understand. Whenever we talk about investing, you must realize the importance of diversification. For instance, if you're tying all your money up in one key issue, guess what? Whatever happens to the popularity of this character, whatever Disney or Marvel chooses to do with this character going forward, is going to affect your holdings dramatically. So you have to take this into account. Let's be realistic here. The first appearance of Doctor Strange was never really considered a mega key comic book, especially if we compare Doctor Strange to that of the popularity of Spider-Man or even Iron Man at present time. Now, to be fair, Iron Man 2 really didn't become a big collectible comic book really until Robert Downey Jr. put on the suit back in 2008, 2009, and gave us a stellar performance. That still resonates with a lot of fans to this very day. That's really what caused Tales of Suspense 39, Iron Man 1 from 1968 to pop in value. So we really have to be realistic here. Is Doctor Strange that much of a character that we want to lock up close to $35,000 of key Bronze Age comic books into? That's really what you got to look at this from that standpoint. You also have to ask the question here. Let's say that you had $30,000 or $35,000 just sitting in an S&P 500 index fund, in a bank account, in a brokerage account, in cryptocurrency for you guys that love Bitcoin, in gold for the gold bugs that watch this channel. Do you really want to give up that amount of money and put it in a book like this right now? This is a question that you got to ask because it is important. And this is why when we start talking, especially as I did in this video right here, about the financial tiers of the antiques and collectibles trade, you must understand that most people who are putting together an investment grade portfolio of collectibles, if those collectibles are valued at anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a piece, which if we look at this list, there are some that are valued at this amount. Here's one right here. Most people, if you're working a corporate job, you don't even have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a business owner. If you're making between $60,000 to $90,000, you can comfortably afford on a regular basis collectibles, for the most part, that are valued between $1,000 to $3,000. Now, obviously, people are going to call me an elitist. People are going to say, Sean, you're out of touch. Most people can only afford items like that maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. I tend to disagree. If you're somebody who's financially established, if you're working a corporate job, if you have investment income coming in, if you have investment properties, maybe you own real estate, you have money from that coming in, you can comfortably afford those items. The same is true if we start collecting items that are valued at between $3,000 to $5,000 a piece, which make up a large portion of the items on this list. Obviously, you can look through the list. Batman 232 qualifies, Detective Comics 400, Batman 227 is in this group, Werewolf by Night 32, Tomb of Dracula 10, X-Men 94. There's a lot of books that fall into that value where if somebody's out there, they're gunning it, they're resourceful, they're good with their money, they already have a 401k, they have brokerage accounts, they have other investments, maybe 2-3 times a year, they can afford a collectible that's valued at between $3,000 to $5,000. Now, this is where you got to be careful. When you get above $7,000, there's very few people that on a regular basis, like every quarter or even every 4 months, can afford to spend $7,000 to $10,000 on one collectible. If someone's usually going to take the plunge to items like that, it's usually done possibly once a year if they're financially established. If they're really gunning it, if they have the means, if they make like $150,000 per year, they can afford to do that maybe once or twice. But overall, after you get to that price point, $7,000 to $10,000, you have to understand the amount of people that are vying for items that cost more than $10,000 a piece is a very small pool. The way the auction companies, the way the grading companies, the way the overall news media makes it sound, everybody has money to pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for collectibles and antiques. We see record-breaking sales every day. I report on those sales almost every day on this particular YouTube channel where I talk about, an AFA graded Castle Grayskull from Masters of the Universe that sold for over $200,000. Or a rare Star Wars figure that sold for over $100,000. Or a coin that sold for $500,000. Or a piece of art that sold for $2 million. Or a trading card that sold for $1 million plus. You need to understand the amount of marketing, the amount of promotional advertising that goes in the back end of when an auction company receives an item like that for consignment to when that item goes live and sells. There's a lot of things being done to prop up the value of that item behind the scenes. And this is what the average person does not understand. This is why I get a lot of Timmys, Kimmys, and Poindexters in my comment section that'll tell me, Sean, you don't understand. If I had the money, I would buy a copy of Action Comics 1 because Action Comics 1 always goes up in value. Well, if you actually do a price history of Action Comics 1, you're going to see examples where somebody paid like $500,000 for one of those books. It came up for auction and it only sold for $400,000. Not every ultra rare high-end collectible is a good investment. You have to look at the price entry point. you are making into the market. Now, obviously, if you're cleaning out Grandma Edna's house and you come across a raw, cruddy copy of Action Comics 1, given the fact that you paid nothing for it, if you send that book to be graded and you ship it and consign it to an auction company, you're obviously going to make a fortune off of it. But you have very little invested in that book. When you start investing in antiques and collectibles, you have to look at the opportunity cost, you have to look at the time value of money, and you also have to take account what we're talking about here, diversification risk. Now, let's look at these 9 books in this hypothetical Bronze Age investment grade portfolio. All of these books actually make an excellent diversification hedge. Let's be realistic. If DC Comics does something great with Batman, and maybe Ra's al Ghul makes another appearance in one of the upcoming Batman movies, Batman 232 can easily climb higher than what it's currently sitting at. So this is a great investment hedge if you're a Batman fan. If you really want to put your money into something, Werewolf by Night 32, I mean, obviously, I really don't recommend it over the long term, but it's no longer selling for $10,000 in 9.4 easy either. You're looking at it at $3,500 for a 9.4 condition copy of this book. You're buying it at a market low. So if something is done with the character of Moon Knight, which in my opinion is just a poor man's version of Batman, but if they do something else with that character, this book could potentially appreciate in price. So to answer the question here, this is what you really need to understand. Is trading up always wise? In this case, believe it or not, guys, as much as I love Doctor Strange, as much as I personally also own a copy of Strange Tales 110, in this case, it is not worth upgrading if we have to give up all of these books here with an estimated market value of $34,950. I would even argue, let's say that we're able to keep one of these $5,000 books, whether it's a Night Nurse 1, whether it's a Giant Size X-Men 1, if we're allowed to even keep one of those books, I still would not tell you to trade the rest for a Strange Tales 110. There's too much risk in trading up to an item like this. And this, again, is what a lot of people get wrong. That's why we're having this discussion. Now, there's a couple more things you got to keep in mind before I end this video. Number one, there are very few investment-grade vintage collectibles that sell for less than $1,000 on average, again, with few exceptions. This is why if you watch this video here, which I am going to link in this video's description, I go into detail on this. When you start to get under $1,000 for investment-grade collectibles, you're taking a risk because there's a lot of those items usually out there, and a lot of people can afford to buy those items. That's especially true when you go further down the list, like when you get to like items that cost like $500 a piece, or heaven forbid $100 a piece. This is why I get in arguments with a lot of Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters, especially in the collectible trading card space. I'll have people that come in the comment section and say, Sean, you don't understand. I'm going after really cheap Magic the Gathering reserve list cards. Cards from like sets like Ice Age or Fallen Empires or Homelands. And they tell me, hey, if I buy these cards that cost like a quarter or 50 cents a piece or even $1 that are on the reserve list, if they go up in value and I double my money, you know how much money I'm going to make. And I have to explain to these individuals that is a bad investment strategy. Simply from the standpoint, we're in an age where a Magic the Gathering Alpha Edition Black Lotus card in near mint condition sells for 6 to 7 figures if graded by like PSA and PSA 10 on the open market. Those reserve list cards that you're buying that sell for only a few dollars a card, there's a reason why they sell for that price point. This is something that you need to understand when you look at investing and diversifying into the antiques and collectibles trade, especially with a long-term price horizon. The items that tend to appreciate the most, now there are exceptions here. Every market is different. Every market goes through bull and bust and bear cycles. You have to understand that. But overall, the items that tend to appreciate the most are items that are valued typically in the $3,000 to $7,000 range, believe it or not. That's why if you look at this list, almost everything here sells for pretty much in that price point. So when you're looking to invest in these markets and possibly trade up, you must understand that what you are giving up is the potential for diversification. That is the whole point of this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please feel free to share and like this video. And please let me know if you got something out of this. Thanks again. Have a good night.